Super happy to be here. Difficult this year to follow up with all these great presentations, I want to say. Awesome presenters, awesome topics. Also, kudos to the organizers. The venue is great. The event is great. As one of the OG guys, I have to say you're doing the franchise thing very well. So, my name is Joerg. I guess many people already know me. I've been here a few times. I've been doing software for a living for a long time. Started LabVIEW a long time ago. Founded my own company a long time ago. I like all of these things. I'm going to just skip that over. I will talk a little bit about my company. Usually, I'm bragging about my company just for my own vanity. This time, there's an end to the bragging. So we are working with customers. We help them make their lives easier when they develop software. That's the majority of the work we do. We are very much into processes, into workflows, into tooling. We take on work packages, but we also do training, consulting, all these things. And I want to stress the fact that we are an NI Center of Excellence, which at the moment doesn't mean so much, but I hope it's coming back at some point. Also, we won the Global Consultant Impact Award at NI Connect this year. Again, this time the bragging is to an end that you'll see later on. The presentation that I'm going to give today, small company, big threats, cybersecurity for the rest of us. Here's your chance now to walk out the room. I will not be mentioning LabVIEW. I will not be talking about software development at all. So if you all have something better to do, I'm not mad. Please walk out now while you still can, or suffer with me for 25 minutes, or 23 minutes. We've been suffering for 25 weeks, 52 weeks, whatever. And I will tell you why we do that and why I think it's important to talk about it. Disclaimer, this guy is not a lawyer, right? So I'm talking to you from the point of view of the owner of a small company who just wants to get by, and all sorts of entities oppress their laws, their regulations, their questionnaires, etc. on us. So I'm sure some of you might know more about the topic than I do. Please, at any point, feel free to chime in and correct me if I'm saying something stupid or if I'm skipping over anything that you feel might be important to mention. Also, I have 52 slides for 25 minutes. That's a new experiment. I've been known to run over my time slot, so we'll see how this goes today. It's a new experiment. Okay, so talking about cybersecurity, I assume that all of you think about, that all of you are aware that this is an important topic that is relevant for all of us. Like here's this risk barometer report that says out of like thousands of people who were questioned in the industry, the overall outcome is that cyber incidents are the most important, the most looming risk that we see in the industry. This is the only statistic I'm going to show today. I just want to screw with you, actually, so let's skip over this. You think about hackers, right? Well, maybe yes, maybe no. It's not about the software thing that I'm going to talk about. Let's look about some incidents that happened more recently. A 158-year-old company from the UK was sunk by a group of hackers. How did they do that? They were not really hacking. They were guessing a password. They guessed the password of one of the employees, made their way into the system, and brought down a company that was operational for 158 years, a few hundred employees. So this is a cybersecurity incident. Has nothing to do with firewalls, with software we write. Has everything to do with a policy, right, that was maybe not in place or maybe not adhered to. Next case. Coinbase, a crypto firm, need to pay up to $400 million to compensate their customers. What happened? Somebody bribed an employee to hand out important information about their end customers so they could trick the end customers into giving them the money. Again, this is not something that like technically could be avoided. Again, it's something about policy, about maybe even culture, about all these things. Some of you might remember the SolarWinds sunburst incident in 2020. I think the US government and many US companies were very strongly affected by that. This actually qualifies more as a hacking activity, I guess. Somebody was able to inject a backdoor into the build process of the software. So when the software was installed, it would say, here's an update to the Orion network management software. People would install it, and the backdoor would be used, would be exploited. Okay, so there's also technical aspects to this. And then we have the log4j. Everybody probably has heard about that. It seems that every Java developer in the world uses the log4j library. It is an open source project. What happened? It had an exploit. That exploit was found. It was being used. And all of a sudden, all those hundreds of millions of devices using that log4j were susceptible to that vulnerability. Again, something that, on the one hand, could be probably prevented technically. Rather, maybe it was more a question of the policies in place, or not in place, actually. So a quick test before we go into this. How much do we actually know about cybersecurity, right? So is it a cybersecurity abbreviation, or is it a secret service? Let's see. CRA. Quick show of hands, is it a cybersecurity thing? Do you think? Who thinks it's a cybersecurity thing? Okay, and who thinks it's a secret service somewhere over the world? Okay, no, it is the EU Cyber Resilience Act. Not very good, let's see. NIK, what could that be? Is it a secret service? Show of hands. Okay, is it a cybersecurity thing? What is with the rest of you guys? You have to pick one of the two, okay? Who says secret service? Okay, and who says cybersecurity? Okay, you're wrong. This is the Nemzeti Informatios Központ, the Hungarian National Information Center. Next one, NCSC. What is that? Secret Service? Cybersecurity? Okay. Well, this one I'll give you both because it's the National Cybersecurity Center of the UK, so both apply, basically, right? BSI, what is that? Secret Service? Okay. Cybersecurity? Yes, it is the Federal Office for Information Security. CTNA, what could that be? Secret Service? Okay, cybersecurity? It is a zero trust network architecture, so cybersecurity related. And the last, second to last, ASIS. That sounds like Secret Service, maybe. Okay. Everybody else thinks it's a cybersecurity thing? Ooh, it's the Australian Secret Intelligence Service. And now the last one, I promise. ISMS, what's that? Secret Service? Okay, cybersecurity? Still lots of hands not raising. It's the Information Security Management System, so clearly a cybersecurity-related term. So, obviously you guys don't know a lot about cybersecurity. Neither did we, I want to say. So how did our journey start with this? Why am I even here standing and talking about this? It was the summer of 2024. We were enjoying our lives a little bit, waiting for a purchase order to come in from one of our biggest and most important customers. Instead, I received an email with this. Cybersecurity clauses light for suppliers that we should, in the future, sign up for or sign in for. We have to do that. I said, oh my gosh, what's that? Let's look through it. 10 pages, how bad can that be? Well, some of these things were ridiculous. Are these really applicable to us? Like physical environmental security. For us, as a not even co-located small company of 10 employees, we must ensure safeguards are in place for physical security perimeters, okay? Ensure video cameras are used. I can't even do that with German law. We have to protect supply and third-party secure areas with adequate entry and exit controls. I mean, that could be maybe be the key to the door, okay? And we must implement environmental security controls. What does that even mean, right? Okay, think, okay, I can accept that, but there was a second document in that email, and that was a self-assessment questionnaire thingy with like close to 100 questions. And this is really when the proverbial shit hit the fan, because none of these questions were straightforward to answer, right? We had nothing in regards to do that. So one of the questions was, for example, does the organization conduct pre-employment screening or background checks prior to commencement of employment? Now, again, German law dictates that I cannot ask those questions unless we are like security related or health related or many other of these things. So clearly the question is no. But I thought, okay, I mean, some of these questions we can just say not applicable, and that's like our get free out of jail card. And still, what happened, we needed the purchase order, right? So everybody dropped whatever they were doing, all 5 engineers, everybody sat down and started frantically searching for things we already have, some process documentation, some things, writing down what was not putting into words, and discussing what wasn't even a process just yet, right? Because we needed to adhere to these things before the customer could send us the purchase order because of the new regulation. So, like, our beloved Doku Wiki was the first go-to place for us to type in some things security-related, like antivirus protection. Of course, we had that already, but nowhere was a document to be found that described how we define and use and dictates the usage of antivirus software, right? So we did all of that. We spent, I want to say, 3 days maybe, all of us, so that might be 15 work days already, collecting all sorts of documentation, trying to make it so that somehow we can sneak by and just make the customer be able to send us the purchase order that we needed. So what do you think what happened? Did we make it? Who thinks we made it? Thank you, Norm. I love you. Sadly, we did not make it. This was the result. A software consulting company, a modern one at that, proficient, award-winning, audited to be using proper processes, winning awards like for impact, etc. And where did we get out with what we have? Non-existent, initial, and kind of managed maybe in some regions. So this was what the audit, the result of the audit gave us. So it goes without saying that I was not only mad, but also disappointed and sad and frustrated and all the bad feelings that you can have. We still made it somehow that we could then get the purchase order at the end, but I knew and I understood, okay, this will not be the last time, right? This was the first of our customers to ask for that requirement of fulfilling those things and then working those things and being able to give the answers that we need to give. So we said, okay, we need a more strategic approach. So let's see what's out there. First thing, obviously, is legislation. And in the European Union, that's easy. There is the European Union Cyber Resilience Act that I mentioned before. I'll talk about that in a little bit. So we knew sooner or later we need to adhere to these laws anyhow. So that's something that might be the North Star we need to work towards. We had some organizations we found that help with these things, like with guidance and whatnot. So there's the German BSI, there's the NIST, of course, does many of these things. And they offer standards and frameworks. ISO 27001, that's internationally recognized. That might be a good thing to do in that regard. NIST has the framework for cybersecurity and other things. The BSI, the Bundesinstitut für Sicherheit, that also offers these things. So, okay, we did some research. We found these are the things that we might be able to work towards. And then we took a closer look. And the Cyber Resilience Act of the European Union is scary, to say the very least. The things that we will have to do if we want to sell products, digital products with digital elements in the European Union are ridiculous from the point of view of today. And what is a product with digital element? More or less anything these days. Like everything has some kind of little PCB inside or some kind of intelligence. Surely the software that we write is purely digital, right? So there's no way around that. Binding regulations with fines for non-compliance, it says here. 15 million or 2.5 of global annual turnover, whichever is higher. I'll have to evaluate that year by year, of course. Might be that we're over that. No, I'm joking. Of course, 50 million might be a deal breaker for us. And of course, applies extra-territorially to any product placed on the EU market. So for any non-European Union company wanting to sell to the European Union, these laws apply just the same. So for any of you guys, that might be the same for you. So what do we need to do, or what does the Cyber Resilience Act talk about? It says take cybersecurity into account. So while you're developing, you need to do certain things like risk assessment, secure design, of course. You need to have your encryption in place. You want to have no weak passwords, as it says here. You have to do vulnerability management. SBOM is a topic that we've talked about a lot recently. Not me, but Eric, wherever he is. So there are some buzzwords that we have already heard, right, that we already understand and know of. There are other things that also need doing. Proof requirements, a declaration of conformity is required. I'm sure this is worse than it sounds here. We haven't looked into that just yet. We do have until 2027, by the way, until the CRA is actually enforced. We have to disclose vulnerabilities. Okay. How can we disclose vulnerabilities? We need to monitor for them. We need to assess them. We need to have a list somewhere. We need to check that against the database. All things that we not necessarily do on a daily basis in a systematic way, right? I mean, of course, if somebody tells me, hey, this package on VI Package Manager has a vulnerability, I might do something about it. How often has that been known to happen up until now? Has anybody ever heard about a vulnerability in a VI package? Not very applicable to our world, right? So we don't even have the databases to do that, let alone the mechanisms in place or the processes in our companies. Usually, really, we don't care about that, to be honest. Anyhow, are there any CRA equivalents in the US? Lucky guys and gals, you have none of that here. There are little bits and pieces for you guys. But I think sooner or later, there will be a similar system in place. There are some of these aspects already covered by laws and some rather more recommendations. And again, you guys know more about that. Right now, there is not this one US equivalent to the European CRA that we are facing right now. The ISO standard, that's internationally recognized, a standard for information security management systems. I'll talk about what that is in a second. We can get certified against that, and that might mean that we have an easier life towards our customers, because when the next questionnaire comes around, the reply might be, we are ISO certified. That answers all your questions in one go. At least that's my pipe dream at the moment. But that might be useful to have in the future, to have a shortcut to answering those questionnaires with those uncomfortable questions. The NIST Cybersecurity Framework, who knows about it? Okay, that's already not much. Who has done anything with it already? Same people, okay. So there's potential to catch up, I guess, in this room. The BSI Grundschutz, it's a baseline protection that includes standards that the German Federal Office for Information Security defined. Those guys, they have comprehensive guidance. That's very nice. They have lots of training resources. They have example projects. They even have a virtual example company where they show you how that virtual company went through all these things to create that system and can be used to work towards the ISO certification. And this is what we did. So we created an ISMS, and this ISMS, or Information Security Management System, basically is a list of documents, or is a collection of documents where you describe all the things that might be relevant for this topic, right? So you list all the things you do, you list all the things you have, you list all the things that you're willing to react to, you list how you're going to react to these things, all for the sake of, when somebody asks you the question, having a good answer to that. No, of course, for the sake of being actually in a good place in terms of cybersecurity. And some of these questions that you have to ask yourself are quite interesting, because you would not, if you weren't forced by these laws, to do that actually. So what did we do? We created a bunch of documents, just Google Docs at the moment, still on our drive. Some things were easy, like sketching the network infrastructure of our headquarter offices in Würzburg in Germany. I had fun doing that. I liked drawing the lines and making it look pretty, so that was the nice part. But then it became tedious, I tell you guys. So think about your business processes. Who has ever written down all the business processes that you have in your organization? That's a lot of fun, I tell you. You sit down and you think, hey, what do? We do this, okay. We write software, that's easy. We give training, okay. Another business process in our company is obviously doing the taxes, right? Doing the accounting. So this list goes on and on. It has 25 or 30 line items that we filled in. thinking about all the things that anybody has ever done in the corporate context. Okay. Even better, what is the software we are using? So that starts easily, right? We use Windows and Microsoft, and we have LabVIEW, of course. We have our password manager. And then you have like 50 or 60 other things that are on your computer that you sometimes use. Little tools, big applications. So you go on, you list all of that, you describe it. You think about who is using it, like what is the risk vector depending on the group of people who are using it. You go on and on and on, and you list all those things. Then it goes on with IT systems. So we have, of course, our personal laptops. We have our servers. We have our backup systems. We might have our network devices. We might have test devices. All of the things that qualifies as an IT system, again, you go and you list that. Nice. Again, a few hours wasted. At one point, we realized those are like interconnected, right? So we need some kind of database. A table in a document just was not manageable anymore. Like, these things change, right? Buy new hardware, other hardware is discarded. Same with software versions. So we're using an online platform called ZenKit for our to-dos and our project planning that lended itself very well to do this kind of thing where you can have linked tables, if you will. So currently, we are working on making that database, filling it up with information that needs to be there, and figuring out how to keep it up to date. Because that's the other thing. Of course, you create it once. That's the main act. But you have to keep it up to date, right? It must be up to date. Otherwise, it doesn't give you much. And then another thing is the protection level. Once you have all your assets, all your things listed, you have to think about, OK, now let's start talking about the actual thing, what can happen, what can break. That was, again, a long discussion to discuss. We have normal, high, and very high. That's what the ISMS suggests to do. Now, what does that mean for us? Normal, the business processes will be affected only insignificantly at best. Potential financial loss is less than 2,500 euros. Downtime of more than 24 hours is acceptable. Okay? And then high would be a higher number of euros and less hours, and then very high, the same thing. It was difficult for me to actually get to numbers that actually make sense. I didn't know which numbers to put there, right? What is a very high financial risk for me? When do I feel like the company is in danger? Where do I feel like this really, really needs mitigating? It's not as trivial as it sounds on the surface if you want to do it right. And then, of course, once you have that, you go through all of your assets, and every asset gets assigned like risk level in terms of the confidentiality, in terms of the integrity, availability, all of these things. So you see, lots of fun. We put something in the Doku Wiki. Conclusion of all of this, I have to cut it short now. First of all, cannot recommend. No, 1 star out of 5. In all seriousness, it is difficult. We didn't have to know how. Everybody needs to do it. We need to adhere to the standards. And when do you do that, right? When is the time to do that? We want to do LabVIEW programming. I don't want to be creating lists. So status is we're right in the middle of things. Half of it maybe is implemented. And potentially we can finish it by the end of the year and get certified next year. And I am sorry, guys, there is no time for the discussion. So thank you. Time for a question, maybe? Would there be any question? Yeah, Tom.
So having done this, do you feel safer at your company? Or do you just feel like it's a lot of paperwork?
I don't feel safer yet. I think it is a necessary step to eventually feel safer. There's only one way to do it, and that's the right way, just as with everything else. Yeah.
I will say, too, that here in the U.S., the nuclear industry is one that has already, reacted extremely quickly to cybersecurity in the wrong way. Like, they made a gut reaction to make everybody do some very extreme things. But I would say in the past decade, things have changed in terms of a good way to make it reasonable so that we can actually do business. But with that being said, Westinghouse is a huge company. I have an entire team of cybersecurity experts that I can lean on. So it is scary, be afraid. It sucks.
Yeah. One word to that is, I think, we haven't gone to the bottom of all of this, but these regulations for the CRA in the European Union, they have been written by not necessarily engineers, right? So some of these things will just not make sense going out from the start.
That's right.
7 by 7, guys, can you come back during these questions?
I just wanted to say, it's not going to help you with the CRA, but we encountered similar issues with the security demands from clients. And one way that we can get around a lot of that is if they just send us their laptops, because that is all of their integrated security. And as long as they're okay with that, and you obviously sign saying that you're only going to keep their IP on their laptops and so on, that has been a very effective way for us to handle that situation.
Very good. The way we got around the first questionnaire was that they created virtual clients on their systems where we would log in through the browser. So we would not be a risk vector for them anymore. There was no compromise. So similar thing, I guess, yeah. But that's like a temporary solution, I guess. Sure, unless they drag me off the stage. Okay. Thanks, guys.